Hello and welcome to this video on how to customize SVGs using the Canvas software for your scan and cut machine. Sometimes you might find the perfect SVG that you really want to make with your machine, but it's not quite in the right colors that you want to do. It's much easier to change the colors on the screen in the Canvas software before you cut out the design so that you know exactly how it's going to look without wasting any of your precious cardstock. I'll show you how to do that in this video. If you have a Cricut machine or a Silhouette machine instead, head to craftwithsarah.com/help to find a similar video for your particular type of cutting machine and the relevant software that it uses. But if you're using a scan and cut machine with the Canvas software, you're already in the right place. So let's get started. First things first, open Canvas Workspace, and then we'll have a little look at how to just change the colors generally within the software before we start working on SVG projects. I'll go into Shapes over here and choose a couple. Let's go for a few different ones. And you can see as I'm loading these in, these are all appearing kind of transparent. There's no color in the middle, and it's just showing a thin black line around the edge. That's because Canvas Workspace, like a lot of design programs, does the coloring in two separate ways. Each shape or layer that you add has a fill color, which is what fills in the middle of the design, and a stroke color, which is what goes around the edge. I've clicked on this shape here. And then if you make sure that the top option here for properties is ticked, you can see we have a fill box, which is currently showing a checkerboard design to show that it's transparent, and then a line color. So this is what I just referred to as a stroke. Canvas Workspace calls it a line. I'll probably still use the word stroke throughout this video, as that's just really what I'm used to, because that's what my day-to-day design program uses. So apologies if you hear me say stroke, just remember that I mean line. Alright, so to change the colour in the middle, click into where it's transparent at the moment, and then you'll get this pop-up box. You can either click a colour and then press OK, or if I go into it again, you can use this box on the right to click and drag for even more colours. If you know the hexadecimal code or the RGB numbers for a particular colour that you want to do, you can type them in here, or you can paste if you've copied it from somewhere else by right-clicking and then paste. The hexadecimal code is a 6-digit number with a hashtag at the start. Sometimes it will have letters in it as well as numbers. This code tells your computer what colour to output on the screen. It doesn't refer to any particular brands of vinyl or cardstock or materials or anything like that. It's just known so that your monitor knows what colour you want it to show. To remove the black line around the edge, click on the layer, and then where it says line and width, hit the down arrow until that's 0. And now it's gone away. Alternatively, you could change the colour of it by clicking in and changing the colour to whatever you want. And then if you want to, you can make it thicker by clicking the arrow on there. And you can even change it to be a dashed line if you prefer. You can change the colour of multiple layers at once by clicking and dragging around both of them, going into the fill tool and choosing your colour. If you have multiple layers selected, you can also take the line off all in one go. So I've changed that to 0, I click away, and now it's gone from both the square and the triangle. Now, as far as I can tell from digging around, there isn't a colour picker option within Canvas Workspace to let us easily change things to the same colour, but there is still a way to do it. So I've added this new shape here. Let's say I want to make it this exact yellow. I can click on one of the ones that's already yellow, click into the fill, copy this hexadecimal code, including the hashtag at the bottom, by dragging around all of it, right-click, and copy. Then click onto the other shape, go into the fill tool, and then you'll need to give it a fill first of any colour, and then get rid of that one, right click and paste, and press OK. And now that and that are the same colour. Next, let's take a look at recolouring an SVG file. Go to File and then Import from your computer and find the file you want to make. I'm going to use the free Valentine's Day flower pot design, which is available at craftwithsarah.com/free-SVGs. You'll notice in the download folder that this comes in lots of different versions. For Scan and Cut in particular, I find the easiest one to work with is the one in the 04 folder, so it will be called 04 Layers Separated by Colour. Go into that and then choose the file that starts SVG in the file name. You'll notice that it all loads in black. I don't know why my designs are doing this in Canvas Workspace because they are saved in colour, but for some reason Canvas Workspace can't interpret it. And that's the reason I like using the split by colour versions in this software, because I'll know that anything in this group should be one colour, anything in this group should be another, and it will make it easier for me to add the colours back in. To do that, go to File, Import from your computer again, and this time within that same 04 Layers Separated by Colour, there is a file called Colour Guides. Open that, and then you see this is giving us the same shapes, and it's got one of those hexadecimal codes next to each of the different colours. The reason we can't just use this to cut is that this is a PNG image. It's a printable image that you would print with a colour printer. It's not a cut image that you'd be able to cut out of cardstock with your machine. So what we need to do is match all of these colours on the left to this one so that it all is the same. So I can drag a box around all of these on the top left, go into the fill box, and then in the hexadecimal code, keep the hashtag, and then I'm going to copy that number that's appearing above the red here and press OK, and now those are all red. Do the same for the pink. You can click and drag to move this window out of the way so that it's easier to see what we've got here. And press OK. It might be easier to line this up and then right click, arrange, center back. Then open up the layers panel, and where we've got our coloured image down at the bottom, click this empty box to add a padlock. And that means we now can't click and select that one layer. But what we can do is drag a box around all the bits that appear next to this number. And then I know that the colour to make these bits is going to be the hex code that appears near it on here. The layers won't always line up exactly right. For example, you can see this green here doesn't quite match the position of this bit, but it's close enough that you can work it out. I'll just finish this off with the last two. And then this is the last one, another green. There we go. And now I've changed all of the colours, I can go back into the layers panel, click on my colour guide, untick the padlock so I can then click it to select it, and press delete. We don't need that anymore. Because I've got white shapes on this background, they're now quite hard to see. So we'll drag a box around all of it and then go back to the properties and give it a thin line. That won't cut out, so we'll still get the normal shapes, but it just makes it a little easier to see. We've put everything back to the colours that my original designs came in, but what about if you actually wanted to change those to different colours? Well, you could click the shapes on your canvas here and change them, but then you're not going to really know how the finished design's been impacted by those changes. If you want to get a better idea of how the final craft will end up, then drag a box around everything and then copy it, right click and copy, and then right click and paste and move it over to one side. I'll zoom out a bit, and then I'll leave all those as they are for now, and I'll work on the ones on the canvas. Go into layers and then find the ones that are over on the canvas by clicking one and then seeing which one was selected. So for me, that's down here. Then I'll click the next one up and go and drag that into place. Then do the next one up. We're going one at a time. If you've got a project with loads and loads of layers, this can take a little while, but it's worth it to make sure that your colours that you're about to change will be exactly right. I'm dragging these into where they're gonna go. I'm being a little bit rough with it, not being super neat. You could zoom in to make it a little easier. And I'm just doing this by eye now because I know which layers go in which order. But if you're not sure, just click them one at a time over here. And my two little hearts go in the middle there. Okay, so now I have an idea of what this looks like when all the layers are together. Move that over to one side. Zoom out, maybe quite a bit, so that you can add all of those other bits back on the front. And now we can start changing the colour based on this one on the left. For instance, let's say I wanted to make all of the white into gold. I can click on one of the white layers, go into the Properties tool, and change it to a kind of goldy colour. And then I'll copy that hex code and then do the same for all the other white layers. I'm using Ctrl and V on my keyboard to paste, but you could also use right click and paste. Okay, I think that looks nice. I'm happy with that in gold. So I'm happy to move all of the ones on the one I'm actually going to be cutting out to be a gold colour. So let's paste that in there. But I think we could probably go one step further and also make these hearts gold as well. So I've clicked on one. You can press Shift on your keyboard and hold that down whilst you click other layers to go into them all at once. And then you might need to just choose a random colour before it will let you paste in your hex code. I think that would look really nice with those three in gold. So let's find those pieces in the other colours, move them over to my gold section and change the colour like that. And then that's all the bits I want to change. I'm perfectly happy with how that's looking. So I would just delete all of those. And then the next thing to do would be to size this design, ready to cut it out, and then go through the whole cut process. I have a separate video on how to size your design before you cut it out, because you'll probably find that this is really, really small at the minute, and how to separate out everything so that you can cut it one colour at a time with your Scan and Cut. To find that video, head to craftwithsarah.com/help. Choose Scan and Cut from the list of machine options, and then look for the video on how to make layered cardstock designs with a Scan and Cut. That video has all the extra information you need to go from this step to a finished paper craft. Let's have a look at one more example. This is my free Labradoodle design. If you'd rather make a different dog breed, head to craftwithsarah.com/products, and from there you can choose dogs in the list of themes along the side, and then that will show you over 200 different dog breed designs. There's also loads of cats, horses, small pets, and pretty much any animal you can think of. I've already got this to the stage that we did for the flower hearts, with all of my layers separated and changed from the black that it loaded in at to the correct colours, and then I've copied everything and put it in order over on here on the left. Let's pretend we're making this for a friend who's got a chocolate coloured Labradoodle instead of a caramelly coloured one. I find it easiest to work from the bottom and then go all the way up to the top, but you might find it easier the other way around. It's completely up to you. What I'm going to do is do all the colours in this one on the left first, see how it looks and check I'm happy with everything, and then replicate that over on this side. Alright, so I want to select my very bottom layer. Sometimes it can be hard if the layers perfectly match each other on the sides to get the right one. It may be easier by clicking the Layers button over on the left, and then look down until you find the one that you're selecting, and then as you click through each one, it will start selecting those exact layers. The one on the very bottom is the solid lighter caramel colour, and that's the one I want to change. We'll go into Fill, choose a nice dark chocolate brown colour. That might be a little bit too dark. Let's do it in this one instead, so I've got more options. But a little bit lighter than that, and press OK. And then I'll go for the darker one. Make that a real dark chocolate brown. If you want to remove the flower layers, you can do that, either just by dragging them out the way and not cutting them out, or you can press the delete key on your keyboard to get rid of them. If you'd like to know that in more detail, then there's a separate video at craftwithsarah.com/help under the scan and cut tutorials on how to remove all the floral layers from the designs and how to customize the layers a little bit more. But for this video, I'll keep them all in place. Alright, it's a bit hard to tell the difference between my two browns there, so I'll go a little bit darker for that one on the top. And we could zoom in a bit too. There we go. Okay, now I've got the next one. So I want to match that to that brown, so I think I'll need to copy the hex code on that one and then paste it onto this next solid layer, and then copy the code for the darker brown. Rather than copying and pasting each time, you could always write it down on a bit of paper and just type it out, whichever one's easier for you. That's the body done, so now we'll move on to the head. There are 3 colours in the head at the moment, but I only want to use my 2 new browns, so we'll need to do a little bit of playing about. As the ears is already the darkest shade, I'll continue that trend and make that my darker brown too. And then for the head, let's go for the lighter brown. And put that in there. And I think also this piece here, that's that same colour, I'll do that in the lighter brown too. His eyebrows could be the dark one and then his muzzle the light one. So I'll do the muzzle first, seeing as that's the colour I've got pasted at the moment. I'm using Ctrl and C on my keyboard to copy and Ctrl V for Victor to paste. If you're on a Mac keyboard, then it's Command C or V instead. But I'm on Windows. Alright, so that's all the face all coloured, and now I've got my lovely chocolate coloured Labradoodle. You can put the same colour on multiple layers that go one on top the other. Just to show an example, change that piece to the light brown. It looks a little bit weird on the screen with all of the same colour, but when you actually cut it out from cardstock and stick the pieces together using your foam squares to build dimension, you'll be able to see all of the details in individual pieces really easily, and by adding the foam squares between each layers to give it depth, that means you get some shadowing effects which sort of adds extra dimension to it, and it will look just lovely even if you are using the same colour over multiple pieces. But I think I preferred it with the darker eyebrows, so I'll do that one. Now that I'm happy with all my colours, I need to replicate this onto the ones I'm actually cutting out. Let's grab the darker brown first, and we'll start with the easy bit, which is dragging around all of this colour, which was the main body colours that we changed. And then I'll do the same for that lighter brown. Do the easy bits first, which was all of those bits. So change all of that colour to the lighter brown. Then for the rest of the pieces, I need to work out which one I changed. If you can remember it, you can just do it by eye and change it one at a time. Or you might find it easier to drag the pieces apart from the one on the left and then work out which bit that corresponds to. So on this one, it would be this, and then paste that in and move it to the other colour, and then just delete with the delete key on your keyboard that original. My tongue and my nose are the same. So now where's this bit? That would be that one, and that's going to be my darker brown. So I can change that to dark brown. Delete that test one, move that up here. My black stayed the same, so I can just delete that one. My white stayed the same. And this bit I've already changed to that other colour, so I can delete that one. This bit here, I've actually done that the other way around because I've gone for a lighter one, so that one needs to go down there. And this will be my lighter colour. And then I've got this one in the darker. I think I just copied the wrong one. Yeah, I did. I meant to copy that one. And delete, and then all my body ones I've already changed. So now I have all of these in my new pieces. It would be ready to resize because at the moment this is very, very small, and then cut out. As I said earlier, I have a separate video on that. To find it, head to craftwithsarah.com/help. I hope that you enjoyed this video on how to customize the colors of SVG files using the Canvas software so that you can cut the designs with your scan and cut machine. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for lots more similar tutorials and craft projects. To watch all of my introduction to scan and cut tutorials, head to craftwithsarah.com/help and then choose scan and cut from the list of machines. Or to get started right now and make your very first paper craft project, head to craftwithsarah.com/free-SVGs for over 100 layered SVGs to choose from. Thank you so much for watching this video. Bye!